I was visiting my relatives that live long distance. I brought my PS3 and all my games with me so that my cousin can try some PS3 games. One day we were playing Uncharted 2. My aunts and my grandma were watching us play. In Arabic, they are bantering with each other as to whether Elena is supposed to be ugly or if the graphics are just bad. The consensus ended up that Elena is supposed to be ugly because everybody else in the game looks pretty good. It doesn't make sense to them as to why a character would look ugly in a video game. In this video, we're going to talk about why it's a bad idea to make subversive characters for AAA games, why the audience matters. We're going to talk about game industry as well as Hollywood attacking their audiences, and the importance of customer relations. Salam, my name is Mustafa. I am the Chief Executive Principal Game Developer for Subversive. I've worked at Treyarch during the development of Black Ops 4. I've also worked at Zwift on their indoor cycling game. If you're new to this channel, this is my platform in which I share my opinion, insights, and experience working in the game industry. Of course, this channel is to also promote my projects for Subversive, such as Nexus Defenders, which is a narrative-driven tower defense game currently discounted on Steam for the Steam Winter Sale. If you're a fan of games like Defense Grid, check out this game. Link is in the description below. Also, real quick, I was a guest on the SWW show. The podcast episode has dropped recently. Check it out. Link is in the description below. In this interview, I talk about my experience developing games as well as my upcoming game, Beware Tomorrow. So really quick, I want to recap what I talked about in my previous video in which I was talking about Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet. First off, I shared my thoughts. It's a 4.5 minute long trailer that shows absolutely nothing. It just focuses on the main character. Many people online have been very vocal that it's clear that she's a stereotype. Whether you want to say she's a stereotype of a feminist or you want to say she's a stereotype of a lesbian. The way how I phrased it in the video is that I can tell what her sexual preference is by her appearance. Some people in the comments section of my video were trying to act like they didn't know what I meant by that. I feel like those people are being disingenuous, or they're being tone deaf, or there's also a chance that they're bots. The average person will look at this character design and see it as one of those things, either a stereotypical lesbian or a stereotypical feminist. Also, people in the comment section were diverting the conversation, such as saying, oh, you don't like her because you're intimidated by a strong woman. Or some people just flat out said, I'm racist, even though at no point in the video did I ever mention her race. In that last video, I mentioned that sexual preference is one of the least important things about a character. What's important is their personality, their temperament, their mission. The internal traits and qualities of that character are more important and make the character more relatable. Finally, in that video, I said that her character is a turnoff to the mass audience and that AAA games need mass audience appeal, otherwise there will be layoffs. And when I say mass audience appeal, I also include international sales. I mentioned in the video that there's no way that character will be accepted by Arab countries, by China, by Japan. The majority of Asian countries will not accept that character design. Even though I explained it in my last video, I'm going to reiterate again. Being attractive, appealing, and inviting is not the same thing as being sexy. At no point did I say I want her to be sexy. In fact, I literally say the opposite in that last video. I literally say I am against women being sexualized. This is part of my Islamic values. If I see people in the comments section saying that I want characters to be sexualized, then you didn't even watch this video. So I want to make a point about subversive characters regardless as to whether you like the character or not. Let's say you like this character. Fine, you like it, but doesn't change the fact that she's subversive. I mentioned I'm Muslim. Let's slap a hijab on her. I like this design, but doesn't change the fact that she's subversive. Again, you might like this character design, but you can't deny the fact that she looks very masculine in this picture. That makes her subversive. The point of subversive is that it's pushing the envelope of what's considered the norm, what's considered acceptable. Now, she's wearing a hijab, and I like this design, but I know this design will not sell millions of copies for a AAA game. Maybe it might work for an indie game that doesn't need to sell millions of copies, but this is a AAA game. It needs to sell literally millions to make its money back. Just for fun, I made 2 polls in my community page. One poll asking which design you prefer. Now, as you can see, the numbers aren't very high. The majority of the people said they prefer the hijab design. Now, this poll, I think it's more important. Still, again, I got low numbers, but the results, I think, are very realistic. The vast majority of people who participated in this poll said neither will sell well. And I completely agree with that. Having her look masculine, looking like a stereotype, is a subversive design. In addition, if she's completely covered up and dressed like a Muslim, then she is also subversive. This is not a design that will appeal to the core audience of a AAA action game. Again, it might work for an indie game, but not a AAA action game. When I was in college, I took a creative thinking course. I'm going to highly paraphrase what the instructor said because the way how she worded it isn't suitable for minors. But she basically said, in the creative world, if you're going to make something and have yourself be the target audience, then you might as well just resort to self-pleasuring because it's going to get the job done quicker. The point she was making is that when we as creatives make things, whether it's video games, art, movies, whatever we're making, we're not just making it for ourselves, but the audience as well. The audience is an important factor to keep in mind. Because if you're just making it for yourself, then why are you even making it? That just seems narcissistic. One thing I learned while being a solo game developer, because I need to make money to continue making games, I realized this Venn diagram represents how I'm supposed to make games. So I take these 3 circles, games I want to make. So these are games that I enjoy myself. Games that I can make. These are games that are within my skill set that I'm able to develop on my own. And games that can sell, because not every game I like, such as a tower defense game, will sell well. After developing Nexus Defenders, I learned that not all genre of games will sell the same. So the sweet spot is right here. Make sure that I want to make the game, that I can make the game, and that people want to play the game. Because if I make a game that no one wants to play, what's the point? I might as well not even be in the business. When I was working on Nexus Defenders, which is my first commercial release on Steam for Subversive Path, I wanted to make sure that the characters looked cool and interesting to the audience. Aside from the main character, I only have 4 characters in the game. I have Echo version 313, which is basically like Jarvis, your virtual assistant. You have Deathbringer, who's this over-the-top, larger-than-life character who I based his personality off of Apocalypse from the X-Men cartoons. We have the Ironborn, who I basically based him off of Kraven the Hunter or Bane. Someone who's better than everyone else. He's overly confident. He's seeking opponents that can match up to his skills and strength. But I want to talk about Estrella for a second. So one thing I told myself while developing this game is that I didn't want to make a character who is sexualized. I didn't want to make a character people wanted to fantasize over, because that's not what I want to do when making a game. But I wanted to have a cool looking character. I wanted to have Islamic values with her design, also keep her cool looking. She's not exactly wearing a hijab. It's more of a hood that she's wearing. And she's wearing very thick armor, similar to the other guys. I'm pretty happy with the end design that I ended up going with. I based her personality off of Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I wanted her to have that menacing persona, but with a cool looking design that's not a sexualized design. In the last 10 years, I've seen an increase of entertainers attacking their audience when their projects go wrong. I've especially noticed within the last 10 years, Hollywood deflecting blame for their failures onto their fans. I noticed this with the 2016 Ghostbusters movie when they said the fans were sexist for not wanting to watch their movie. Another example that comes off the top of my head is the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, in which they started saying the fans were racist for not accepting that Reva was the new main character, even though the show was called Obi-Wan Kenobi. I didn't watch the series myself, but I saw lots of complaints about how the character was bland and uninteresting, but yet Ewan McGregor came out and started saying the fans were racist. Same with the Marvels. They blame men for being sexist for not watching the movie. But these claims can easily be debunked when you see the fact that other projects with the same core audience, such as Black Panther and the first Wonder Woman movie, were very successful. This shows that the core audience are not racist and sexist due to the fact that they accept these projects. They just don't want to accept the bad ones. And Hollywood was deflecting the blame rather than owning up and saying, okay, we need to make better products. The game industry has took note from this, and rather than figuring out that this is a bad strategy, they started doing the same thing, such as the Saints Row reboot. When the fans said that they didn't like the new character designs and it doesn't fit the essence of Saints Row, they doubled down on the character designs. They said, we're not backing down on this game. This year, we saw Harley Quinn and Friends, Concord, and Dragon Age the Veilguard. While looking at my LinkedIn feed, I came across this post. I don't want to call out the individual because it's more important to call out the action and not the person. This type of action and mentality is not acceptable. This is not productive. As you can see, this person brings up race, and from the complaints I've seen, the legitimate complaints, I haven't seen a single person complain that about her race. Now, there might be people out there who are complaining about her race, but the amount of people who are complaining about her race, the number is so small that I haven't even seen a single person complain about her race. Everyone's basically saying the same thing about her, that she's a subversive character. She is a stereotype. She looks overly masculine. But the main point I want to highlight here, that this person who works within the game industry wants to encourage calling out people as bigots. I then made a post on LinkedIn with that screenshot explaining that the character is subversive. A AAA game needs to have mass appeal for it to make its sales. Also, it's important to have good customer relations. I've worked many retail jobs that required me to have front-facing customer service. And for all those jobs, it is important to try to have the customer to leave with a good experience, and if not a good experience, then to have them walk away with a neutral experience. Even if they are wrong, it's important to de-escalate the fire. I got many game developers who are connecting with me because of my post, one even telling me that he prefers to see my type of energy in his LinkedIn feed. But I got one response from a person who I'm not connected with. She is the CEO of a game publisher. She's telling me I'm overlooking the demographics, that I'm only looking at one demographic that's a small vocal minority. But the thing that I find funny about that type of response, it goes completely against the other narrative that they always like to throw. The audience are all bigots. They're all racist. They're all misogynists. But then they also say it's a small vocal minority. So pick, which one is it? It can't be both. And claiming that it's a small vocal minority is deflecting the issue. It's just like with Concord. There are still people who will claim Concord only failed because it's a hero shooter. Concord only failed because it's $40. The character designs and visuals have nothing to do with why it failed. This can easily be disproven. During the time period of the launch of Concord, it was a trend for artists to redesign the characters. Many artists utilized this opportunity and their channels and platforms blew up due to the fact that they were redesigning the characters. Some were even lazy and just used AI to redesign the characters. This phenomenon of artists making so many videos of Concord character redesign should not be overlooked. when talking about the failure of Concord. Naughty Dog still has an opportunity to save the game. There are instances in the past when the creators listened to the audience and they changed the character before their product came out. For example, Infamous 2, when it was first revealed on the cover of Game Informer what Cole McGrath would look like, fans were not happy. The character looked absolutely nothing like what he looked like in the original game. In fact, many criticized that he looked more like Nathan Drake. Also, from the initial gameplay trailer, he sounded completely different too, so it was basically a brand new person. Now, Sucker Punch, they went back to the drawing board. They made him look more like the original design. Fans were happy with the new results. A more recent example is with the Sonic movie. That first trailer flopped. No one liked the original design, not even the most hardcore of Sonic fans. In fact, they were the most angry. They then went back to the drawing board and made Sonic look exactly what he's supposed to look like. Now the movie has not only become a success, but they just released their third movie, which is also doing really well. The most profitable athlete of all time and possibly the most famous athlete of all time, Michael Jordan, has once said, "Republicans buy sneakers too." He knew what he was talking about. He wanted to make as much money as possible. And that means to not alienate any of his audience. And this is the message I'm trying to bring across to game developers, to my fellow game developers. We're living in a time in which the economy is not very good. We're having lots of studio layoffs. These large studios that are making AAA games need to make a return in investment. Otherwise, that leads to mass layoffs. I have personally been impacted by layoffs in the gaming industry, and rebounding is not very easy to do. Especially with the lack of video game job postings that are available, I want to encourage those of you who are in the game industry to speak up when you see something that is wrong, that isn't going to work. Speak up against this divisive attitude that other game developers are encouraging. Stop calling your audience bigots. Speak up when you see a bad idea. I'm going to close off with this. When I worked at Treyarch, we would occasionally have internal viewings of the trailers before the trailers are revealed. After the announcement of Black Ops 4, we had an internal viewing. This trailer basically shows the gameplay, the different specialists, and their abilities. The studio has a small theater where they play these trailers. After I came out of the theater, I saw one of the senior producers. He had a big smile on his face. He was pretty happy about the trailer, and he said, "Great trailer, huh?" with a big smile on his face. And I told him, I think the gameplay looks pretty cool. It really conveyed the information really well as to what the specialists do. But I told him I didn't like the song. The song is just overplayed. You hear it in everything. I don't think it's a good idea to use that song. I can't really remember what song it was, but it was just one of those oldies songs that are played all the time. I instantly saw this senior producer's face transform. He initially had a big grin, then it went to a thinking face. My coworker was right next to me, and as we walked away, he was like, "Wow, you're pretty ballsy about saying that." Now, I'm not going to say that my interaction with that senior producer led to any changes or not, but I will say, because I don't know what discussions happened behind the scenes that made the decisions, but I do know when the trailer was officially released to the public, it was a completely different song that was used. To me, that indicates I wasn't the only one that didn't like the song that was used in the initial trailer. So with that said, if you're thinking something is wrong within your studio, within your project, speak up, because someone else probably is thinking the same thing, but they're too afraid to say it out loud. Drop a comment below as to whether you think my Hijab redesign of the main character for Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, is a better design or not. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. And finally, I can really use your support by having you wishlist Beware Tomorrow on Steam. It is set for a release in January. It's a first-person horror game focusing on stealth and puzzles. And a final reminder, Nexus Defenders is discounted until January 2nd. Take care. Thank you for watching. Salam.